Anna Whitlow's hands shook as she tied down the last canvas over her wagon. Everything she owned fit into 3 wooden crates. The sky was still dark, stars fading into that cold silver blue that came before dawn. Her breath hung in the air like small ghosts. She didn't leave a note. There was no one to read it. The main street of Redemption Flats. Wyoming lay silent. Windows shuttered. Doors closed. She'd lived here 3 years, and in 3 years, she'd learned that a town could be colder than any winter. Anna climbed onto the wagon seat, reins rough in her palms. The leather was stiff with cold. She snapped them once, and the horse pulled forward, hooves crunching on frozen mud. At the edge of town, she paused. Just once. The schoolhouse stood to her left, small and dark. She'd taught children to read there, until their mothers decided her presence was a poor influence. A widow at 25, that was sin enough. Behind her, hoofbeats echoed on the empty street. Anna turned. A rider sat on the ridge above town, silhouetted against the coming dawn. Tall, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low. She knew him. Grant McCoy, the man who owned half the county and said less than a fence post. "Leave me be, Mr. McCoy," she called out, voice steady despite the hammering in her chest. He didn't answer, just nudged his horse forward, closing the distance between them with an easy, unhurried pace. "Road's dangerous for a woman alone," he said finally. His voice was low, rough as wind over stone. "So staying." Anna snapped the reins hard. The wagon lurched forward. She didn't look back, but she heard him follow. The sun rose blood-red over the plains, stretching long shadows across the frozen ground. Out here, running just meant you died tired, but she'd take tired over trapped. The road stretched ahead, empty and unforgiving. Behind her, Grant McCoy kept his distance, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to leave. She gripped the reins tighter and drove on. 10 miles out, the canyon pass narrowed to a thin ribbon of trail between rock walls. Wind howled through the gap, cold enough to cut skin. Anna pulled her shawl tighter and kept her eyes on the path. Then the wagon jolted to a halt. A cottonwood lay across the trail, massive and old, blocking the way completely. Too perfect to be accidental. Anna stared at it, heart sinking. Someone had felled it. Recently. Axe marks gleamed white against the dark bark. Grant rode up beside her, his horse stamping restlessly. He dismounted without a word, walked to the tree, and ran a gloved hand over the cuts. "Someone doesn't want you leaving quiet," he said. Anna's throat tightened. The town had sent a message. "You're ours to judge, not yours to escape." Grant pulled an axe from his saddle. "Best get to work. I didn't ask for your help." "No, ma'am, but you got it anyway." He swung the axe in a smooth, practiced arc. Wood splintered. Anna sat frozen for a moment, then climbed down. She couldn't just watch. Pride wouldn't move a tree. Together, they worked. He chopped. She dragged branches aside. His hands were strong. Sure, but his gloves were fine leather, stitched neat. His boots were too good for ranch work. She noticed, but said nothing. After an hour, the trail was clear. Anna wiped sweat from her forehead despite the cold. "Why do you care if I leave?" Grant leaned on the axe handle, breathing hard. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he said, "Maybe I'm tired of watching good people get chased off." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't good, wasn't worth defending. But the words stuck. He mounted his horse. She climbed back onto the wagon. The tree was gone. The road was open. But he still followed. A man shows you who he is by what he does when the chips are down. Her father used to say that. Grant McCoy had shown up with an axe when he could have ridden past. Anna didn't trust him, but she was starting to wonder. By afternoon, the sky had turned the color of a bruise. Purple-black clouds rolled in from the north, low and heavy, The temperature dropped so fast Anna could feel it through her coat. Snow began to fall. Not the soft kind. This came sideways, driven by wind that screamed. An abandoned line shack appeared on the left, half hidden by scrub pine. Grant pointed to it. "We need to stop. I've weathered worse alone." "Not in this. You haven't." Anna pushed the horse harder. The wagon lurched over a rut, and the left wheel struck a rock with a crack like a gunshot. The whole frame shuddered. The horse stumbled, panicked, and started to bolt. Grant was off his mount in a heartbeat. He caught the bridle, voice low and steady, calming the animal. Anna's hands were locked on the reins, knuckles white, when the horse settled. Grant inspected the wheel. The spoke had cracked clean through. He didn't say a word, just pulled rope and a spare spoke from his saddlebag and went to work, his hands moving quick and sure. Anna watched, silent. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't expect anything. The blizzard hit full force. Visibility dropped to nothing. Wind tore at her clothes, her hair. She couldn't feel her fingers. "Inside," Grant said, "not a request." This time, she didn't argue. The shack was small. One room, dirt floor, a stone fireplace that hadn't seen flame in months, but the roof was intact. The door closed. That was enough. Grant built a fire with practiced efficiency. Kindling, larger sticks, a patient hand. Flames caught and spread, casting warm orange light across the walls. Anna stood as far from him as the space allowed, arms wrapped around herself. "You think money makes you better than folks?" The question came out sharper than she meant. Grant didn't look up from the fire. "No, ma'am. I think money makes folks assume I never hurt." His voice was quiet, tired. He pulled off his coat, draped it over the back of a broken chair. "For later," he said. "When you stop being stubborn?" Anna said nothing. But hours later, when the cold crept in and the fire burned low, she reached for that coat. It smelled like leather and smoke and something else, something safe. She fell asleep sitting up, back against the wall. Grant stayed awake all night, feeding the fire, watching the storm rage outside. Weather don't care about your pride. Neither does hypothermia. When morning came, they'd both survived. But the world outside was buried in snow, 3 feet deep, maybe more. The door was frozen shut. They weren't going anywhere. Anna woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee. Not the chicory substitute she'd been drinking for months. She blinked, disoriented, and saw Grant crouched by the fire, a battered tin pot balanced on the coals. "Morning," he said without looking at her. She sat up, every muscle stiff. The coat had slipped from her shoulders during the night. She folded it carefully and set it on the chair. "Door's frozen," Grant said. "We'll need to thaw it before we can get out." Anna nodded. She didn't trust her voice yet. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed her one. Their fingers brushed. She pulled back quickly, but the warmth of the cup was too good to refuse. They drank in silence. Then Grant stood, pulled a coal from the fire with a stick, and approached the door. "Heat'll loosen the ice, but it'll take time." Anna joined him. Together, they worked the coal along the frame, melting ice inch by stubborn inch. His strength forced the wood. Her patience guided the heat. Finally, the door groaned open. The world outside was transformed, blinding white, silent, beautiful in a way that felt almost holy. The sun glinted off snow like scattered diamonds. Anna's breath caught. Then she saw the wagon, buried to the axles. Drifts covered the wheels, the seat, everything. "We're stuck," she said. For now. Grant walked a slow circle around the shack, testing the depth of the snow. Anna watched him. This man who'd followed her into a storm, who'd fixed her wheel without asking, who made coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. Why'd you really follow me? She asked. Grant stopped, turned. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Pain, old and deep. I had a daughter, he said finally. Emily. She died 3 winters ago. Fever took her fast. My wife. The town said she didn't pray hard enough. Said it was her fault for not being godly. They drove her out with whispers and cold shoulders. His voice didn't waver, but his hands clenched. I stayed. I had money, land, reputation. I told myself I couldn't leave. Truth is, I was a coward. I let them destroy her, and I did nothing. Anna's chest tightened. So when I saw you loading that wagon in the dark, running because they made you feel small, he shook his head. I recognized the look in your eyes. Same one my wife had, and I couldn't let it happen again. Anna set her cup down slowly. Her hands were trembling. They needed someone to blame, she said quietly. My husband died in a mine collapse. I was 22. The preacher said it was God's judgment on me for reading books instead of keeping house proper. Women started crossing the street when they saw me. Men looked at me like I was fair game. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I was convenient. A story they could tell themselves to feel righteous. So was I, Grant said. Reckon that's why I recognized the look in your eyes. The fire crackled. Outside. Snow slid off the roof with a soft thump. Anna picked up the coat from the chair. This time, she put it on. It was too big, hung past her hands, but it was warm. Thank you, she said. For the coffee, for all of it. Grant nodded once. Get some rest. We'll dig out tomorrow. But Anna didn't sleep. She sat by the fire, watching him stoke the flames, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel alone. Shared cold makes strangers into kin faster than shared blood. That's what her grandmother used to say. Maybe she was right. Morning came with brutal clarity. The storm had passed, leaving the world silent and achingly bright. Anna's eyes stung from the glare. Grant was already outside, digging around the wagon with a shovel he'd found in the shack. She joined him without a word, using a broken board to scrape snow away from the wheels. They worked in rhythm. Scoop, toss, no conversation. Just breath and effort and the crunch of snow after an hour. The wagon was mostly clear. Grant crouched by the front wheel, inspecting the repair he'd made yesterday. His face went still. What? Anna asked. Spokes cracked worse than I thought. The cold got into it. We can move it, but it won't hold far. Needs a blacksmith. Anna's stomach dropped. Nearest one's back in Redemption Flats. I know. She stared at the wheel, at the crack running through the wood like a fault line. All that work to leave, and the road kept pulling her back. There's another option, Grant said carefully. Anna looked at him. There's a homestead 20 miles north. Been empty since last spring. Owner died, no family, cabin's sound. Land's good, needs work, but it's livable. And deed's in my name. He held her gaze. I can change that. Anna felt something twist in her chest. Anger, hope, suspicion all tangled together. Why, her voice came out sharp. Guilt, pity. Or do you think I'll warm your bed out of gratitude? Grant flinched like she'd struck him. But he didn't look away. I think you deserve a choice nobody's given you, he said quietly. Stay in that town and let them break you. Leave on a bad wheel and maybe die on the road. Or build something new. Your call. And what do you get out of this? His jaw tightened. Maybe a chance to do one thing right before I die an old, bitter fool. Silence stretched between them, taut as a rope under strain. Truth's like a branding iron, hurts like hell. But you know exactly where you stand after. Anna turned away, staring at the endless white landscape. North, A place no one knew her. A place where she could be something other than the widow they whispered about. I own half this territory, Grant said suddenly. The lumber mill, the railhead office, the bank that foreclosed on your cabin 2 years ago. Anna went very still. So you're the reason I lost everything. My name's on the deed, but I didn't ask. I let men run my business while I hid in grief. That stops now. Anna wanted to scream at him, wanted to hit him, to make him feel even a fraction of what she'd felt when the sheriff nailed that notice to her door. But she saw his face, saw the guilt carved into every line. He wasn't making excuses. He was confessing. She walked away, boots crunching through snow. Put distance between them because if she stayed close, she'd either cry or strike him, and she refused to do either. Grant didn't follow. He just stood there, hands at his sides, waiting. The hardest trails are the ones that lead back to living. Her father's voice, clear as day. Anna took a deep breath, then another. The cold air burned her lungs, but it cleared her head. She turned around. Show me this homestead, she said. Grant's shoulders sagged with relief. He nodded, mounted his horse, and started north. Anna climbed onto the wagon, snapped the reins, and followed. She didn't forgive him, but she was willing to see what came next. Sometimes. That was enough. The homestead appeared on the horizon just as the sun began its descent. A small cabin, weathered but standing, surrounded by scrub pines and winter bare aspens. The fence was down in places, and the well was covered with rotting boards. But smoke could rise from that chimney. Flowers could grow by that door. Anna pulled the wagon to a stop and just stared. Grant dismounted, waiting. She climbed down slowly, boots sinking into snow, and walked toward the cabin. The door hung crooked on its hinges. She pushed it open. Inside. The air was cold but dry. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, blackened with use but intact. The floor was wood, not dirt. 2 windows, cracked but replaceable. A loft ladder led to a sleeping space above. It was small, simple, and it was more than she'd had in 2 years. Roof sound, Grant said from the doorway. Checked it last fall. Walls are solid, needs cleaning, new glass, some furniture. But the bones are good. Anna walked to the window, looked out at the land, rolling hills, a creek barely visible through the trees. Space. Silence. Why'd you keep it? She asked. Thought I might live here someday, away from town, away from everything. She turned. Why didn't you? Cowardice. He said it simply, like a fact. Easier to hide in a big house than face what I'd lost in a small one. Anna nodded. She understood that. Grant didn't wait for her decision. He walked outside and started working on the fence, hammer and nails appearing from his saddlebag like he'd planned this all along. Maybe he had. Anna watched for a moment, then found a rusted saw leaning against the cabin. She joined him. They worked until dusk, hammer and nail rhythm, sawing wood, lifting posts. No words necessary. The work spoke for itself. As the sun set, painting the snow pink and gold, a rider appeared on the eastern ridge, young, maybe 16, riding fast. He pulled up, breathless. Mr. McCoy, sheriff sent me. Says you're needed for a land dispute in town. The boy glanced at Anna nervously. And ma'am, they're saying you stole the wagon. Anna's blood went cold. I borrowed it from the livery. Paid $2. Town's memory gets mighty selective when it suits them. Grant said quietly. His voice was hard as iron. The boy shifted uncomfortably. Sheriff says if you don't come back, he'll send deputies. Grant's jaw set. He looked at Anna. We ride back together. I'll set this straight. Anna's heart pounded. Returning meant facing every person who'd whispered about her, judged her, driven her out. But running meant proving them right. She thought about the cabin, the fence they'd started fixing, the land that could be hers. You can't outrun a lie. You gotta stomp it dead in front of witnesses. Anna squared her shoulders. Let's go. They mounted up, leaving the homestead behind. The boy rode ahead, eager to escape the tension. Grant looked at her.